And so when you're really curious and you like challenges, boy, if you want it, pick dementia, because there is nothing more demanding of us than a condition that's ever changing and unique with each individual that has it. So how are we going to do this if we don't start intergenerationally working together and as a community coming to agree this thing we call brain change, dementia, we all need to be involved in it.
Hi and welcome. This is another episode of This Day and Age, where we bring together experts in all things aging, from Holland Home, Faith Hospice, and Atria Home Care. We're here to provide you with information needed to help you and your loved ones make confident decisions while navigating life's journey. And I'm Phil Tower. I'm pleased to be along with you in every one of these episodes of This Day and Age. In this episode, I am really honored. I'm thrilled because we're going to be joined by dementia care and education specialist Teepa Snow, who has made it her life's mission to shed a positive light on dementia. We hope this episode, and I should just cross that out and say, we know this episode will leave you with a newfound understanding of dementia and an awareness and a sensitivity to that and how to support those living with the disease in a more positive and respectful way. And there are a lot of people living with the disease, nearly 55 million people worldwide. But I have Teepa Snow right across from me on this episode of This Day and Age. I'm so glad you're not from Grand Rapids, so I'm glad you're here.
I am happy to be here.
In the age of Zoom, Teepa, do you realize how rare this is?
I know, it's a real interview, like with real people
yes.
in the same space.
Yes, so if I offend you, you can hit me during this podcast or anything like that.
Well, you smell fine,
well,
so I think
you.
We're good.
I think we're off to that start. I am fascinated and and I love talking to people. I'm curious. I've done so many interviews throughout my career, but I'm curious what ignited this spark in you to focus on dementia and just these issues that are affecting so many families and so many people.
Yeah. Well, it started, actually my grandfather moved in when I was a kid, and I wouldn't say it was a passion at that time. It was a job at that time as a kid to help my mom out and help my grandfather out. Mm-hmm. My mom was not a good match for him. They had sort of a contentious relationship. And so with his dementia, he would say things like, well, I got to get home. Flo's looking for me, which was my grandma who had died, and he'd been her primary carer.
Sure.
And my mom would say, Dad, what part of this are you not remembering? She died. We had the funeral. You don't have to go home. And he'd go, what are you talking about? And instead of doing that, I would say, oh, Grandpa, if you leave, I will be here alone in the afternoon while Mom teaches. Please don't go. And he would go, well, I can stay one day. And so very early, I recognized there's a difference between figuring out how to work with somebody who's not seeing things the same way or arguing with them. And my mom would like to argue. So then when I was a teenager, I started working with kids with developmental disabilities. And that was a different kind of brain thing. And I would go, okay, well, what can I do with someone who has autism and a speech problem? Well, we could try this. And then I went on into college and tried a couple of different things, but started working with people who'd had strokes, people who had problems with head injury. I worked in head injury for a while as an occupational therapist, and found that I was really drawn to people who had cognitive shifting because I like the challenge, and I'm really curious. And so when you're really curious and you like challenges, boy, if you want it, pick dementia, because there is nothing more demanding of us than a condition that's ever changing and unique with each individual that has it.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you said it, because it does present itself in a unique way in every person. And we're going to talk about how this became your calling and your positive approach to care. I want to get into that. By the way, Teepa has an amazing website, teepasnow.com, chock full of just so many great resources. But as we get into this, it's really important for our listeners. There are a lot of people listening to this who have misunderstandings about dementia. We hear the term Alzheimer's, which is a disease that causes dementia, right?
It is. It's one of many forms of dementia. So dementia is a collection of symptoms, and it's called a syndrome because if you have this collection of symptoms, in other words, something is going on in your brain cells, and the brain cells are starting to misfire. They're starting to deteriorate, and they're starting to die. But not all of them. It's in select areas of your brain. And unfortunately, it can also be because the blood supply to your brain isn't working very well.
Right.
Or the nourishment of your brain isn't working very well. So, that means that people who have diabetes, or people who have hypertension, or people who have had strokes or heart attacks, they're at greater risk for certain dementias. But it won't always be Alzheimer's, because Alzheimer's is a specific type of dementia. So different dementias have different causes, different progression patterns, they have different forms even. And so we know that there's lots of different dementias. On the latest count, over 120 forms, causes, and types. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. And so Alzheimer's, even within Alzheimer's, we now suspect 5 variations of Alzheimer's. And that's relatively new. That's within the last 5 years, 10 years that we've come to understand it more specifically. And now we're talking about like Lewy body dementia, or frontal temporal dementias, or vascular dementia, or like with the football players, chronic traumatic encephalopathies. Fancy words for my brain is being changed. Parts of my brain are dying, and other parts are starting to activate that you wouldn't have seen as active before.
Right.
So it's not just about brain failure, it's about brain change. But there is part of it is brain failure, but part of it is new behaviors that you start seeing that surprise you, because part of my brain is now doing things it wouldn't have done before, while another part is no longer able to participate.
So memory loss itself, or even if it's short-term, is not necessarily dementia.
Absolutely not. Because what we know is that we all have inaccurate memories.
Oh, thank you for putting it that way.
Because the brain works the way it does, there's a part of our brain called the hippocampus. And if you get into this work at all, you'll start seeing learning and memory, hippocampus. And so people are really interested in that part of your brain, which is part of your primitive brain. But it has 3 jobs, not just one. It helps you learn and remember new things. It also helps you find your way from place to place. So when you go somewhere, you want to know how to get back to where you started. And so that's called wayfinding. And your brain draws maps so you can find how to get back to where you started. And then it also helps you keep up with the passage of time. How long has it been since? How long has it been since you ate? How long has it been since you slept? How long has it been since you were 15 years old? And so when you walk through a doorway, your brain goes, oh, where am I? And what that means is if you went to the kitchen to get something and you get in the kitchen, have you ever, Phil, had the experience of like,
what did I come in here for?
Bingo.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you stand there and you look around and you try to think. And then finally you give up and go, okay, I was in the living room. And you go back to the living room. And as you sit in the chair you had been sitting in, your brain goes, oh, yeah, I was going to call Mary.
Right.
But you had to go back to where you started to remember what you were going to do. And that's because your hippocampus got busy finding the way to the kitchen, and then it couldn't remember what you went in there for. That's normal aging, just in case you have that, because I can tell you're like, so is that the beginning? It's like, no, that's normal.
Right. It's when you begin to do things that are out of place, like the putting the car keys in the refrigerator.
Well, and then not when you find them going, oh, crap, that's right. I was putting away the ice cream and I laid them down because I had to move the frozen peas.
Right.
It's when I find the car keys and I turn to you, my husband, and say, why did you put my car keys in the freezer? Because you don't want me driving? And you're like, I didn't put your car keys. Well, you must have, because I never put them in there. And so my brain is sure that I didn't do something that I did. And I start also frequently sounding like I'm accusing you of doing things you haven't done. And so you notice an emotional edge to me that you wouldn't have noticed before. And I get impulsive. So I'm saying or doing things that are not, you even say, well, that's not, why is she doing this? This isn't her. Or I'm even more impulsive than I was. Like now the credit card bills are like, what did you buy?
Yeah.
I didn't buy anything. So the combinations are often what tip us off. that something, because it has to be more than one thing for it to actually be a dementia, considered a dementia.
It's good to know. Teepa Snow is with us. Teepa has made it her life's mission to educate, spread awareness, and transform the culture, thankfully, around dementia care. And we are talking about that in this episode of This Day and Age. You specifically have come up with this wonderful thing that you've branded called a positive approach to care. And I think you almost hinted at that in the way you dealt with your grandfather, whereas some people are just trying to, shake the memory loss out of people, and you can't do that.
Don't you remember? I told you already. And it's like, well, if he remembered, we wouldn't be having this conversation. I can't make that which is not working work. So what do I have left to work with? And so if I have someone who's not remembering things, I need to keep that in mind. And so when he says, well, what time are we going? It's like 2:00. That's what I told you the last 5 times. What I want to do, like you asked me, what time are we going? Go ahead and ask me, Phil.
Yeah, what time are we going?
Oh, hey, you're wanting to know what time we're going? Oh, we're going to go at 2:00. Now, the thing about radio is that you can't see me holding up 2 fingers for Phil and going, oh, we're going at 2:00. Oh, hey, Phil, I have a question to ask you. Would you be willing to help me for a second?
Sure.
Come with me. I want to ask you and show you something. So now what I'm doing is I don't want to answer the question anymore. So I'm going to do an interjection. And the interjection was, oh, hey, Phil.
It's like you're introducing a new thing, which is stimulating, getting me excited, and distracting me from that other frustration.
Cha-ching. And so what I do is I trick your brain, and it's a trick.
That's really cool.
Yeah, but it's also not pointing out, you're not going to hold on to this, and I'm going to get frustrated.
Will that work for me when my wife is mad at me?
Actually, if you acknowledge, you know what? I think I've made you angry. I am so sorry because I didn't mean to do that.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, I have a favor to ask of you.
Yeah.
And it's the apology. And I think all too often when somebody is living with a brain change like dementia, you talked about your wife, but sometimes it is my wife. Sometimes it is my spouse. Sometimes it is my parent. And so that recognition of, because you just did it, like, would it work with my wife? And it's like, well, what if your wife is starting to have changes that you didn't realize was the start of a dementia? And do you want her to be angry with you? Do you want to be frustrated with her? Yeah. Well, then why keep doing something that's going to not work for either one of you?
Yeah. I'm so glad you walked right into that, because I know people are listening to us right now on this podcast saying, okay, I think I'm in the beginning stages of this. And this can be really scary for someone. I mean, really scary. We talk about anxiety and panic. This can really start that off, where sometimes maybe those symptoms aren't there. But I want to ask you, what do you tell someone and their loved ones who maybe after a diagnosis know they're at the beginning of these stages?
So it sounds like you've gotten some rough news that you've got something happening in your brain, and they're saying it's dementia, or they say it's a specific kind of dementia even. Tell me how you're doing. Are you doing okay? Sort of not so great? Or are you feeling horrible about the whole thing? How are you doing? And the way I ask it means this isn't a social chit-chat question. This isn't, how you doing? I'm fine, I don't want you to cover up. I actually want to know, are you doing okay with this news? Are you somewhere with this news, or is it miserable news? Because I really want to enter a conversation with you of where are you? Because this is going to be now your new normal. So where's your emotion? And I've got to check in with you. And so let's imagine you've just been diagnosed. If I said, how are you doing, Phil? You've got some rough news there that you've got this thing, this dementia. You doing well with that, or sort of in the middle, or are you feeling pretty down about it?
Right. And they can process that early on.
Absolutely. And if they say, I'm really down, okay, here I've got a question for you. I know you're really down, but what are 2 things you're still able to do even after the diagnosis?
Yeah.
I mean, tell me 2 things you're still doing and doing well. Because I think when we hear a diagnosis of dementia, our brain sometimes goes, oh, yeah, man, this is awful. I remember my grandma. I remember this. I remember that. And we go to the dead end. We go to the very late state of dementia rather than well, the person's still sitting right here. They're having a conversation with you. Let's start figuring out what's working for them and what's one thing you wish were different right now that you have this condition, quote unquote, on board. What's really getting to you? And let's put it out and let's start working with it, because, I can't fix what's wrong, but I can start to look at what do we need to shift or change to make this better for both of us.
Okay, Teepa, I'm going to throw a curveball at you, which I know you've already seen this curveball and probably hit it out of the park, and that is the denier.
Yeah.
The person who says, no, the doctor's wrong. I want a second opinion.
So when you went, it feels to you like that guy doesn't really know what he's talking about.
Exactly.
Yeah. So tell me more about that. When they said it sounded totally like not what you're experiencing, or you're thinking maybe it's something besides dementia that's causing the things that you're having?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you're feeling like it's something that still probably we could do something about?
Right. What do you mean
Okay.
to say? My brain's overloaded, Teepa.
Your brain's just overloaded. Okay, well, it sounds like then we should think about stress management for right now. How about if we look at, so tell me how you're sleeping. Great or not so well?
Yeah.
Well, let's work on sleep then. Because the reality is, what I know is for 50% of people living with dementia, there will be damage in the very front of their brain, in the prefrontal cortex, in an area that gives them self-awareness. So if they have damage from dementia in the part of your brain that helps you be self-aware, is it really denial or is it brain damage from the dementia? And it means, I'm like, okay, I can't fix it, so I got to work with it. So if I could get them to be willing to address sleep issues or stress issues or trying to drive on your own issues, is that stressful these days? Would you do me a big favor? Would you let me drive and you navigate for me? Because I want to see sort of the direction you usually go to the hospital, because I'm not sure I would follow that same route without you. And now I've given you a job. I've given you something to do, but I've also got you out from behind the wheel this trip.
Yeah. I like that a lot. Teepa Snow is with us as we are talking about dementia and the progression of dementia, and just how really at the core of this positive approach to care and a different way to really embrace people, I guess, if you will, with dementia. You have a wonderful thing called the GEMS model as you look at different stages, because there are clearly
there's a progression.
Different stages of dementia. I have a family member. I'm living seeing live through this, and I'm so glad that I know about positive approach to care. But can you walk us, and we don't have a lot of time, but just walk us through these different stages, your GEMS model. And I love this because you've got this visually at teepasnow.com.
Yeah. So if I were to say to you, you've got moderate deterioration, you've got massive deterioration, I mean, you're like at end state. I mean, that's pretty dire and awful. So instead, I thought, I don't want to talk about global deterioration. I want a different way of having conversations about abilities. And so the GEM state model is an abilities model. And so we talk about sapphires and diamonds and emeralds and ambers and rubies and pearls. So if someone is in a sapphire state of mind and a sapphire ability, they're the one that can support life, like it's oceans or sky. I mean, I picked the vision imagery to make it easier. So if I'm in a good place and I can be flexible and I can support other people, then I'm a sapphire. If I'm a diamond, I'm clear, I'm sharp, but I'm also rigid and inflexible. So I like what I like when I like it, and I like it the way I like it, and there's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it, and you're not doing it the right way, and I am so sorry that happened. And a diamond state is it's where you can do great as long as it's your way, but when it's not working, your frustration, and you can be cutting and you can be hurtful. It's just like, ow, what'd I do? Well, you didn't do it right. And it's like, I hear you. I am so sorry that happened. Tell you what, let's try again, and I apologize. So now emerald is where we're getting, it's not clear, it's not sharp, it's green and on the go. And so this is where we might notice somebody getting lost in time or task or sequence or in place. And so this is where you start to hear, what do I do now? Or where am I supposed to go? Or wait, I have to get to work. And Mom, you don't work anymore. Sure, I do. They're working for me at the office. I have to get in. Oh, or, where are the kids? They should be getting off the bus. And So I'm getting lost in my life.
On the go with a purpose.
Yeah, on the go with a purpose. So the words are getting a little vaguer. So it's really important that we notice that and go, oh, you're waiting for the kids to come home. You know what? I think that's going to get taken. Listen, could I ask you for a big favor? That distraction thing.
Yep.
And then we have amber. And amber is where it's all about sensory. If I like it, I want more of it. If I don't like it, I'm not doing it. Now, this means self-care activities can get not self. You're trying to help me do things, but if I don't like how you're doing it, it can be a strong reaction because I still can use my hands and my body to do a lot of things, but I can cause more trouble sometimes than people think that I can. So I'm taking things apart. I may be getting myself layers upon layers of clothing, and then I don't want you taking them off, or and that's rough. And then we get to where I'm in the ruby state, and I'm strong, but I lost skill, and so lots of falls and lots of not able to use my fingers really effectively. But I can sing, I can dance. I can often walk a lot to a point where I'm exhausted, or I sit and I have a hard time getting going. So knowing that the fine motor stops, but the big strength is still there. So that stop sign on fine skill, it's really important for us to take up the pieces and figure out how to support someone. And then finally, in the pearl state, the person is trapped in a shell of their body. They're still present, and with the right support, they can come out and be present even more for a brief period of time. But it's getting to where the layer upon layer, they're still in there, that beautiful pearl, but they are ruled by reflexes. And so it's a different way of looking at the right care and the right support so people shine. And I can't fix dementia, but we can help the person in that brain state by being able to understand how to support and how to help. And that makes a big difference for both of us, frankly.
Yeah, I love it. That whole GEMS phase for dementia, and just one of those many great resources that Teepa has and you talk about. But I want to talk about something that I think everybody is aware of and probably is on your mind, and that is this tidal wave, this avalanche of old people that are coming.
Baby boomers.
I'm getting there. I'm at the tail end of the baby boomers, but seriously, I mean, we are talking about a 50% increase in the number of Americans 65 and older requiring nursing home care, from 1.9 million in 2030 to, or 1.2 million in 2017 to 1.9 million, and that's only going to get higher. Of course, the number of people needing care for dementia and Alzheimer and other cognitive debilitating type diseases, and as you said, 120
at least
types.
At least.
Just mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Does that concern you? Or as you look at this, you laugh at me. Okay, Phil, that's the dumbest question you've asked in this.
No. It is that sort of like, we got a problem, Houston.
Yeah.
And we got a big problem because the number of people interested in working in geriatrics in general is going down. The number of younger people getting into healthcare in general is down. And our understanding that we've got to build a community of care that's going to range from independent living to the communities and then into specialized care. And we just do not have the structure in place right now that's going to allow us to do that. And it's a little scary as we're in that group, because I'm there too, we've got to build a community that's inclusive and knows what to do. Right now, Phil, I don't know if people are aware, 70 to 80% of all dementia care is provided by families.
Yeah.
I mean, right now, volunteers, families, friends, they're the ones that are doing the heavy lifting now. But that's the group that's going to have dementia. So how are we going to do this if we don't start intergenerationally working together and as a community coming to agree this thing we call brain change, dementia, we all need to be involved in it. To some extent. I mean, I started young and it made a difference for me.
Can you be cloned and be sent to every medical school in the United States? If they just get a few minutes with you, and trust me, if you're on the other end listening to this podcast, this is a force to be reckoned. I'm so excited to be here with you. We could go on for another hour. I do have a question just about talking about this with families and specifically, I've learned so much from you, and we've learned a lot in this 20 minutes or so we've been talking about how to engage with somebody. There's all that tension around, family gatherings around the holidays. Boy, I don't know what to do with Uncle Jim.
Yeah.
Because I know it's there. How do I communicate with his wife or others, and what are some of the wrong things to do? Do you have any wisdom for our listeners as we close this conversation?
Yeah, I do. So I'm going to give you the way to do it, and then we'll go over the most common way it is done.
And then please, a few don't do this because you really step in it. All right?
Yeah, so I'd go, Phil, it's Teepa. And I would wait to see if your eyes lit up and you go, Teepa, oh my God. And you offer me a big hug, or I go, Phil, it's Teepa. And you go, Teepa, who are you?
Right.
Then that's my cue to go, you're wondering who I am. I am somebody, oh man, you may not even remember me, but I sure remember you. Let me think here. The lake. Have you ever been to the lake in the summer? Because I'm picking a memory that we had together.
Oh, I'd love that.
And it was a really positive, wonderful memory together. You taught me to swim. Now, I've got to watch myself that I don't get tearful about it, because I don't know whether you'll remember the moment or not. But I want to give you an emotional moment of us together, and you go, oh, yeah. Are you related to the little girl I taught to swim? And I'm like, yes, I am. And what I don't say is,
that's
I'm
me.
her. Yeah,
Right.
Because that may not make sense to you. I'll go, I am.
Right.
And you go, she was a troublemaker. And I go, well, I inherited that, I think.
I love what you just did there, because you allowed that memory of you in their brain with dementia. You allowed that to be right.
Yeah. Because do I get credit if my brain works better than theirs? I mean, that's the whole definition of dementia.
Wow.
And in that moment, I got your brain to work great. And that's the gift I got back. Like, he remembered me. And maybe he doesn't. And he goes, no, I don't. And I go, I had an uncle at the lake, and he used to be the most amazing. He taught me to swim, because I can still tell the story even if you don't know the story, but I just have to change how I tell it.
I love that. Is there, just real quickly, is there something you shouldn't do?
Yeah. Uncle Phil, you know me, right?
Yeah.
I'm Teepa. Now, don't you remember? Uncle Phil, look at me. Look, no, you know me. You know, that harassing people to remember that, and all I'm doing is stirring a pot and yelling and coming in on top and hugging real quick.
Yeah.
All those kinds of things set somebody into a place of distress, and then I don't like how you behave and say, oh, that dementia is awful. And it's like, well, I triggered it.
I love how you say that, because almost every family has that one over-the-top person that's going to go in hard and loud, and they need that Teepa Snow wisdom to dial it back a bit.
Yeah.
This has been so great. I hope we can do another one of these.
I'd love
We've got
to.
a part 2 and a part 3. Trust me. We really do. Thank you so much.
Phil, thanks for the opportunity, and thanks for what you do to help people appreciate what's possible.
Yeah, a lot of good happening here at Holland Home. And teepasnow.com is where you can find out more about Teepa Snow. Imagine that. This has been a real honor, and I just want to remind you, if you or someone you know has a loved one living with dementia, so many of us do, we encourage you to check out our website, as I just said, teepasnow.com. You'll learn more about our positive approach to care, her GEMS state model for dementia. You can also visit hollandhome.org for more information. There are a ton of great resources at the hollandhome.org website. And most importantly, if you have a friend or loved one who is going through this journey in their family, will you share this podcast with them? That's going to be, so many people, instead of having to go to a website or read it, if they can hear this conversation that Teepa and I just had, it will be really helpful to them and really easy for them to digest. So many of us learn better by hearing a conversation. But we hope you will share this podcast, follow us wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, and share this day and age episode. And for more important information to help you and your loved ones make confident decisions while navigating this thing called life, be sure to check out our podcast website, which is thisdayandage.org. We've got several episodes worth your time, thisdayandage.org. I am so glad you've been listening. Thank you. I'm Phil Tower. We'll catch you next time with another episode of This Day and Age.